He's in school.
They grow up so fast.
They do. Well, the little one's 7 months now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Reid, how's baby Rue?
He's doing very well. He's just like growing like a weed and talking, and he's big into Star Wars and stuff right now, so I'm really pleased with all that. But yeah, he's great.
Okay.
All right, Matt, really quick, what's going on with Burgundy Wave?
Well, we are live now, so
we're live now.
We will
okay.
See. Yeah. No, we're live with it. Because we're definitely talking about that. Hey, everybody, just go. I know we're a little bit late. Blayne and Ashley had some stuff going on. Per usual. What would the first episode be if we weren't as prompt as MLS game kickoffs? But as soon as Ashley gets here, we're gonna talk. So now this is behind the scenes banter time for those of you joining us tonight. What's up? Oh, and there she is. Look at that.
Let me go grab my drink really quick, and I'll be back.
Look at that. There we go. You did it.
Man, how did you make your new room look so much like your old room?
It's the same stuff in the background. I mean, or you're talking about Blayne?
No, you. No, Blayne's room. I can't believe you'd even ask that question. I don't know.
I got the scarf wall. I know. I just moved the stuff. I mean, that's what the movers do. They do that. But I did. You'll notice, everyone. I tweeted it. I did have the change.
Galaxy
to the center.
Sorry, Jesus.
Yeah.
Don't tell any of them.
Well, the Galaxy one's gone. So yeah, that moved.
It's been a minute.
I mean, sorry, man. I can only fit so many on the.
Yeah.
On the
no,
sides.
It's fine. It's a good setup. If the space in my bedroom and where I'd put my desk would be different, that'd be my backdrop and everything.
Yeah. We reoriented. I feel like I have a better, all my scarves are over here and we haven't switched them around yet. Spencer's like, I can't believe you're even going to do it. We didn't move the scarves. I was like, it's fucking fine. Reid has all of them. No one expects me.
Yes, as Rabbi Mark Goodman, my co-host on Holding the High Line, will speak to, folks, we make a big deal about the actual location that you're in. Yeah. So at his old place in Denver, the basement where we recorded, which acoustically was perfect together, we referred to that was the Michael Azira Memorial basement, and then now, so the joke is that I record my laptop that you are all on is sitting on the Jeff Lorenowitz Memorial kitchen table as well.
Oh, so, I mean, great names there. Though.
I know.
Those are some classics. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Michael Azira, it's been a minute.
Very solid.
Yeah. He's still kicking around with New Mexico United. He's like their off the bench destroyer. Like
amazing.
when they want to go 4-3-3 to 4-2-3-1, he comes.
Because he was a sounder first, and I remember we loved it. Like Spencer and I, we loved him, and then just didn't work out.
Look at that. We have another little baby Roo.
Look at him. I know. What do we call the second one? Can't have two baby Roos. We got to think of a better Never Vela-Roo.
Baby Brace. We have
not Carlos Vela.
I don't know if that's coming back this year or not.
All right.
We'll have to find out. A little bit of shade thrown at Matt in the chat there about wearing conflicting gear.
Okay.
I mean, I like multiple. I'm technically wearing LAFC colors. Yeah. So am I gonna get who cares? You can do teams.
Here we go. All right. Well,
I am anti-Seattle Sounders today.
There you go. That's mine.
I mean, I'll defend Matt. I'm a Kansas City guy, but when I was covering Montreal, I was just as big on them as my own team.
Yeah.
When it's part of your job, it's worth it. You can like two teams easily.
I might get absolutely obliterated for this, but I love the Sounders. And then there's 2 to 3 teams that I actively hate, and then everybody else I'm like, good for you. I don't why not? I don't necessarily always buy the merch, but I like other teams that aren't the Sounders. You can't like other. Spencer has a New York Red Bulls Thierry Henry jersey that he wore until it just was hen. Why not?
Yeah, every single MLS stadium that I go to, I get a scarf for. The only two scarves that I think universally I will never say I don't actually want one will probably be LAFC and then RSL. And I have a very good friend who's a San Jose Earthquakes fan, and we specifically did a scar swap to like troll each other in the Cali Classico and everything. So, and I did the exact same thing with DC United, as Alec Rivera, friend and former Last Word writer, will say, Matt, you need a very firm reminder of the 1996 MLS Cup. And I look at that every single day, and it triggers me.
There we go. That's perfect. All right. Well, I think we've got. I've got some additional. Hey, wait a minute. Somebody else's. Sorry, I got distracted by a Twitter post from the Designated Players podcast where they also had a Lexington SC and a Cincinnati scarf, and I was like, "Is that my scarf? Well, no, that's not my scarf. Well, what's going on?" Yeah, that was not expected. So, well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We're going to do the intro for the podcast real soon. I hope you enjoyed the behind the scenes banter, but we are back. It is good to be back. It is good to see you all in chat as always, and appreciated. The social media has been shared on Twitter, so please do share that. It's also out on Discord. Anything else you want to share it at, do so much appreciate that. Though I guess now we have to be like, share it on Twitter, share it on Megalodon. I don't know. Whatever.
There's other things aren't there.
Mastodon. That's what it is. Dinosaurs.
Because I'm not going to do that.
On your favorite social media platforms, whichever they may be du jour. So yes, please do that. Appreciate it so much. And of course, if you're joining us for the first time for our YouTube stream, you may have been very confused by all the chatter we just did. Just some fun, just some fun banter. But please do like and subscribe. And we do this every week to just help provide some insights into the general fantasy game. And again, if it's your first time, welcome to the community, and I hope you have a fantastic ride this year. So let's do the quick intro. Hello and welcome to Season 9 of the MLS Fantasy Insider, our first 2023 preseason preview episode. This episode is brought to you by the amazing Patreon supporters of the MLS Fantasy Insider. It's because of you that we're able to keep this project going, and I'm so happy to have each and every one of you as a member of our growing community. Normally here I would say no, actually, but no, for real. For the first episode of the season, truly brought to you by the Patreon supporters. Please check it out, and we're going to keep on going because of your support. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partners in fantasy, Blayne Riffle and Ashley Savage. We'd also like to welcome our special guest, Matt Pollard from Last Word on Soccer and The Burgundy Wave.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we did the huge disservice last year by only having you on at the end of the season, and so I thought, what better way to try to make up for that than having you on the first episode of this season. And with hope more.
Yes.
That's the thing with Matt, everyone doesn't understand. It's like, Matt, I want you to come on the podcast, and he's like, I need like a week's notice, which is completely reasonable. And I'm like, that's
totally
ridiculous.
Normal. No, I'm with very Team Matt on that.
It's like ridiculous. Notice that people don't know is when a guest fall through and I'm like scrambling through Discord being like, anybody want to come on the show tonight? Just send your
maybe that could be a gift for maybe like a guest spot on the podcast where you could be a Patreon giveaway or something possibly.
Ooh.
We could do
You might want to vet someone so it's not just like this isn't just for the random MLS sicko on the internet, but it's a very specific type of MLS sicko. But that would be, I don't know, just spitball ideas here.
We can do that. We usually reserve that for the top tier. We could have one be like the roulette tier where it's like, yeah, put your name, subscribe here, and whenever we have a fall through, we'll just spin it and draw a name out of a hat and be like, you can come.
I mean,
there we go.
Sign this waiver that you're not going to show up and like troll and like spout out a bunch of profanity.
Exactly. Reserve the right to just
literally a family-friendly show, as we've got.
Exactly.
We've got
Ashley, family-friendly show.
Oh, you don't have wine delivery at your house? I do.
I don't.
I am the wine deliverer for my wife.
That's right.
So that's it. But no, again, happy to have everybody back. Thanks to the patrons. I have a quick update for you all in the second part of our show. I have a quick update right now is I know I got many comments last year about my keyboard at times with it being so clicky. Well, I now have a more quiet mechanical keyboard from, I'm not sponsored by, but I guess I'll plug it, from Razer, and so I'm typing on it right now.
no one would know.
That would be perfect.
It's like magic.
So with hope, for those of you who over the years have been like, hey, I can hear your keyboard in the background, I hope to have solved that this season, which was a solution of just buying a new keyboard that took far too long. But I loved my clicky mechanical keyboard, but
literally silence
for you all.
You may have fixed my problem because I have a nice mechanical keyboard that's really loud as well. So I may be the offending party, and if I am, I'll get it fixed this year.
Well, we'll see. I'll let you know. It is a Razer keyboard that uses like laser optics instead for the mechanical. It was like laser mechanical, and I was like, sure, we can roll with that.
I just like that you're literally silencing your haters with your new keyboard purchase.
I'm helping address legitimate feedback.
Yeah,
that's what it's
good for you.
It's all about. It also sometimes appears in the editing. I'm like, ooh, let's just mute that part right there. But no, we actually do have, before we get into the bulk of our show tonight, we're going to be talking about our early reactions to the preseason trades that have happened so far. Some of them are rumors, and we may touch on that, but lots of the ones that have already been confirmed on MLS's website. And I'm sure you've heard other pundits talk about the impacts of the trades, but we are doing it from a fantasy point of view. What sorts of impacts are interesting or just to keep an eye on of a trade or transfer or someone who is no longer, or a team that has lacked doing some transfers, and what might that mean for the fantasy season? That's what we're focused on tonight. After a few little quick updates, starting, I guess the first two are Blayne. Do you want to give them an update on you for this season?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little distracted with the little one.
Yeah.
Got a 7-month-old now, so my time has been a little crazy. And then with everything going on, it's just, new house, new baby last summer, just settled in here. And I know we're going to talk about it a little later, but I have volunteered to help out with some of the SB Nation news going on. And so that may eat up a little bit more time, and we'll have an update on some of that later. So other than that, that's where I'm at. Just new house and new baby last summer and settled in, ready to go, and maybe having to take a little more time off to help with the little guy, but should be here most weeks.
Yeah, so this could be Blayne's swan song season, so we will see what happens.
That, but my time may be more limited from here on out.
We shall see. And then, of course, the next update, I know this was something that weighed very heavily on Blayne's mind, and we also have Matt here who may, if he would like, weigh in on some, but I know Blayne, SB Nation has, of course, been in the forefront of a lot of people's DMs and content and just that, and you wanted to make some comments about that.
Yeah, really heartbreaking news that Vox is going to stop supporting a lot of their soccer writers, a lot of their soccer outlets that they've had. And it's just been a time in flux for a lot of people. Got some good news today, which fortunate for a couple of places, but I guess Sounders at Heart and Dirty South Soccer are going to continue to be supported. So they're not cutting everybody off, but it looks like a lot of them are getting shut down. And I mentioned I may be helping. I volunteered to be a technical contact for the Blue Testament, which is the Kansas City group. And if they try to go independent, I'll be there to support that as much as I can and do any of the technical back-end work, because that's in mine. We've got some good news. I guess RSL Soapboxes became Wasatch Soccer Sentinel. And then Dynamo Theory became Bayou City Soccer. So two of the groups have already gone independent, and we're hoping that more will join on. I know I'm pushing for Blue Testament to do that if they can. I don't know if Burgundy Wave's going to do something like that, but the hope is that we get some of these groups out there and independent and share some resources that way. I don't know if Matt knows, but he got tweet quoted in an article this week about it, talking about the loss of coverage. And
recording in progress.
Say his Apple stuff there, but one of the Revs president actually said that they're going to do what they can to help support those writers and try to keep things going. And it's a huge loss just for soccer in America. They cover so much. And I know the Kansas City guys that I've talked to, they're sad about sporting, but what they're really sad about is NWSL and indoor coverage. As crazy as it is, SB Nation writers were the number one go-to for pretty much everything in WSL and the only go-to for indoor soccer outside of those leagues specific websites. So I hate to see this go. My call for action for everybody here is, if you know some of these people, follow them, find out what they're doing. If they pop up a Patreon or something, be willing to help them out a little bit. I mean, if every one of those readers gives even $1 a month, that could cover hosting costs to go independent, bring everything back up. Because even in this fantasy community, one of our number one go-tos for a lot of news was this crew, was the SB Nation writers. We got so much good information on day-to-day activities, injury reporting, everything, because these are guys honestly working for pennies, getting press credentials. They love doing that, but they have training access. I know we had a couple of sporting right coverage that they went to training, and if somebody wasn't there at training, they would let us know. We got all that news from these guys and these ladies. There's a lot of ladies in there too. It's just we're losing a lot of our coverage here for the fantasy community as well. And so it hurts all around. It's kind of a dark cloud hanging over the start of this season. So if you know anybody who's writing for them, if they start trying to do their own thing, I would encourage everybody to go support. If you can volunteer. If they do a Patreon or anything, whatever you can do to help get this back going, because we don't want to lose this coverage.
Yeah, well said, Blayne. Don't have anything to disagree. I'll admit that like the RSL Twitter community kind of came after me for maybe some of the tongue-in-cheek point on the Apple TV one, but no, I mean to work really hard and to finally get the Emmy job at Burgundy Way, which I had been up for a few times then, and then 4 months into that, basically get told that we're, not getting funding anymore is an absolute gut punch. And for the Rapids community particularly, I'm not going to speak to Kansas City, Blayne, but, a lot of those MLS communities, the SB Nation site was where a lot of those writers cut their teeth originally. It was a good incubator for talent. Like, how many guys at The Athletic at one point were at one of the SB Nation sites or adjacent to that? I can't tell you how many times, particularly in the end of the 2021 season, where a national writer or a local outlet here in Colorado that did not cover soccer at all would DM me, reach out to me, being like, hey, just to make sure I'm not based on that. Like, I guarantee you, every single one of the Athletic guys has read something from me, or over at the Post, and that's base level contact that we need every single time. How many times is there a first take or an undisputed 20-minute segment about something in the NBA or the NFL that comes out of report from some local boots on the ground local beat writer that only specifically covers that specific team, that asks a question and gets a quote or gets something from a source, and they spin that off. And there's so much of that base level coverage that's going to make Andrew Wiebe and ETR's job so much easier that now is potentially getting reduced. Burgundy Wave hasn't made a decision. Blayne, I know you gave some updates on that. I'm happy to say, with the news that we got on Friday, some sites were flat out told that they're done March 1st. Burgundy Wave was not that. So we made that first initial cut. What we're doing in terms of other stuff, I'm not entirely sure. Still having some discussions internally. There's some pros and cons to both, but just to echo what Blayne said, with unfortunately where we are, I think in a sports media and an internet media standpoint, for something to genuinely be healthy and grow that you're interested in, unfortunately, a lot of that's going to have to come with you subscribing or giving money in some capacity. Just simply showing up and then clicking and being subscribed and then occasionally sharing it with someone is not necessarily a revenue generator that's going to cover all of those costs and everything. And I was looking forward to, with what little stipend we got at Burgundy Wave, not pocketing that, but using that to do 2-3 away day trips that I was going to do, or save up for potentially an away playoff game. And now that's obviously seriously in doubt. So the biggest thing that you can do right now is visit those websites, retweet, follow everybody on those social media channels. I had a big one of every single one that somebody posted on Burgundy Wave if you wanted to check it out from last Friday afternoon, I think. And then if those sites end up starting a Patreon, subscribe to that. And certainly if they go independent and whatever changes happen from a social media standpoint, migrate that over in terms of who you're following and subscribe to, and then tell other people in your own MLS communities about that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing that. Nothing to add. Definitely see what we can support, and with hope we'll be able to maintain a lot more of this content and valuable insights that everything provides. So yeah, check it out. And if there's anything that we can do as far as retweeting or viewing the content, that's definitely something we should do as the consumers. So if Matt puts out something, retweet it. Look, as he before we went live, open the link, scroll to the bottom, get them the ad revenue, just do everything that we can. So if it's valuable content you care about, try to help support it. So we'll see what happens. The one thing I will say to kind of end on a lighthearted note is if there is one community that I can look to come up with punny and funny and creative names as these sites have to find new names, it is the fantasy community. So you guys may be called upon to come up with names as rebrands are in the process. So I have faith. I have faith in all of you. The last quick update I have before we move on to, I guess I'll just lump these all together for our housekeeping segment. It really makes sense just to do that. So for the housekeeping that we have, I guess I'm not going to do the pause. Maybe I will. I'm rusty, the big editing pause. So moving on to the housekeeping, first preseason content. This is our first preseason episode, but you can expect some more content coming out with MLS Fantasy Boss. We're going to do a little bit different than we have in the past. Instead of having an individual author with individual writers, which is a fantastic idea and always so close, I think it's going to be a little bit easier to consolidate some for some more general articles. So we're going to have some different preseason content coming at MLSFantasyBoss.com. We're also going to have some more preseason episode previews here with MLSFI. We'll of course do our usual East and West preview, and then we'll have our our week 1, round 1 kickoff as we get closer to that time. Be sure to, we got Apple now, so things are going to be a bit more standardized. It should be a lot of fun. I was looking at the midweek games with Ashley this afternoon as we were kind of planning some things out. So I think it will be a lot easier with content and with game management. But we'll cover more of that as we get closer. Also, for you Patreon supporters, I have the update. I mentioned some of this on Twitter, but I was going to show it live with the episode, and then I'll send out some pictures later. But I've gotten the first delivery of swag. Of course, we have our 22 and 23 stickers, since I had some trouble getting these last year, so that'll be going out. Again, also for our 2022 subscribers, we have the magnet based on one of the MLS Fantasy Insider alternate logos that we had the votes on last year. They, of course, the round logo, so popular in our league now. And for the next tier up, we also have the winning alternate logo, MLS Fantasy Insider, little acrylic pins that we can have going out. For the top tier supporters, it's been hard to find the little mini soccer balls again, and especially at a good price point now. So I'm looking into getting some challenge coins printed up. I thought that would be a cool little addition to send out. So that's the plan to help our 2022 and 2023 top tier Patreon supporters, is getting some cool little challenge coins going, as well as you can expect us to have another round of voting for alternate logos so we can get more magnets and more pins, because those are pretty cool, and maybe one more special surprise that I'm still working on. So that's the quick swag update, and I'll send these pictures out after the episode, but you all tuning in are the first ones to see that. Again, we already made reference to it, but don't forget, Apple TV is going to be February 1st. We'll get able to start doing our subscriptions, or for those of you who are season ticket holders, then you're already in. That's not me. So I'm really looking forward to Apple TV and what kind of content that they have. I loved a lot of those announcers they put up there to see some of these old players. I know, I feel like that's a hot take almost, of seeing some of these old players. I've seen both, like the rage and not, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it should be fun. So yeah, check out. Not sponsored by Apple TV, but going to mention Apple TV because it is a big change for this year. But I know what everyone is here for is to talk about, or listen and share and chat. Please do share and chat about just reactions to some of the transfers that have been going on with preseason, and that's what we're going to be talking about in our next segment. Okay. I'm starting to remember how this thing works.
I never could understand it, so Godspeed.
What's a podcast? All right. All right, everybody. Here we are talking about our early reactions to preseason moves. Again, these are our fantasy interpretations of the reaction. So if you want to hear just general reactions from just the game point of view, of course, check out everything at MLSsoccer.com. Check out the content that people like Matt put out and on the other websites that are still there. But we are trying to keep it all focused on the fantasy game. So, of course, those of you who are in chat, please do share your thoughts as we go through here. We're going to focus on position by position. I thought that would be a bit quicker than trying to focus team by team with all the transfers. There's been a lot. You can head over to MLSsoccer.com and go to the transfer tracker if you really want to see every team broken by, or just transfer tracker actually is the news. All transfers is the complete transfer tracker that they have. It can be kind of weird sometimes. Like if a player is out of contract and then gets re-signed, he'll be on both sides of the tracker, which I get it, but I also think it's kind of annoying. But if you want to track everything there, that's where you can go and find this info, as well as some of the breaking news that we'll see. But we're going to split it up. I know we usually combine keepers and defenders, but we're going to split it up this time. And Ashley, will let you kick this one off. Exciting, impactful, interesting. Just there have been a few keeper changes, and I think that are worth talking about. So what do you see from a fantasy point of view as worth mentioning?
Yeah, I think when I first went through this, one of the first things, and I know Matt will roll his eyes at me, that just jumped out at me was LAFC's defense. And to me, that goes down to Crépeau. I think Crépeau was a great signing for them going into last season. I think generally he had a very good season for them, and I think kind of shored up that role in a defense that, won an MLS Cup. And there was a lot of rotation there at certain parts of the year, either through injury or preference. I think we're kind of still trying to figure out how Cherundolo wants to play that back line. And for me, that the back lines have a lot to do with really quality defenders or goalkeepers, I mean. So Crépeau's the first one that kind of stood out to me is probably going to come in priced high, probably is going to have both a good floor and a good ceiling, which I know sounds contradictory, but you know what I mean. And like I said, just kind of depending on how they shift that back line, is a keeper that I was excited to watch last year, was questioning a little bit in the build-up, but he really came through for a lot of the rounds I picked him up in a lot of their bigger games. And then I guess just because I'm first, I'll go ahead and touch on it and say the Sean Johnson signing with Toronto to me was a big signing. My understanding, and someone tell me Ashley you're wrong, is that he was a free agent. And I just cannot understand that bad business on NYCFC's part, but that's not a fantasy implication. That's just a judgment by me. I think, the transition to the Bob Bradley Toronto has been an experiment, but I get pretty nervous and excited when Bob Bradley can really sink his teeth into a roster. I think that's something he does the best. So getting Sean Johnson up there, I think, could really make me reconsider Toronto defense, who was, can I say, one of the worst in the leagues? Can someone fact check me there? I mean, gotta be last season fantasy points so low.
Really bad.
Yeah, I think at least bottom 5. Like, they were relegated. If they were a defense that would be relegated. Go for it, Matt.
Second worst in goals against in Major League Soccer. Excuse me,
Thank
third
you.
worst. So
Okay.
San Jose had they had 66 goals conceded. San Jose had 69, not nice, and then DC United had 71. I don't think very many of our listeners would have had Bill Hamid on their fantasy team many times last season.
No. Well, and he wasn't even healthy most of the time. So yeah, it's, we talk about this a lot when we talk preseason, and honestly, even the first couple of weeks of a season, right? We're like, well, I don't know. I want to see how it pans out. I don't know how I think it's going to pan out in Toronto, but Sean Johnson being signed to me is a big positive note, and it's something I'm definitely gonna pay attention to for keepers and defenders there.
Quick aside, I love Christian's comment about Clint Irwin. I don't think we'll be talking about him, but I have a super soft spot for Clint Irwin. Matt knows what that is, but yes, the clear backup in Minnesota, right there. Blayne, anything to add for this one?
Yeah, I'm curious what Sean Johnson's gonna do, but I'm not sure, and I worry about Crépeau and that injury. I mean, broken leg. I think it was a double fracture on that. It was nasty in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming he could be healed and back, ready to go. I mean, if they were a clean break, legs don't take that long. But I don't know what he's going to look like to start the season. I don't know what his training regimen's been. I loved Crépeau at LAFC. I thought he was a kind of a sleeper pick and on those good matchups. I just don't know how much I trust him. But there are 2 names that I really trust, and Blake's going to be the runaway front runner to start the season. if you can afford him and fit him in, I think that's kind of your clear cut number one goalkeeper in the league. And I don't think anybody's really going to question that. My number two, and it also comes with the recent signing of Romney, is Petrovic in New England was on fire last year. He saves penalties as well as anybody else in the league, except for maybe Melia. But nobody saves him like him that's currently in the league. So, I mean, he's as good as everybody else or better. That defense looks a little better. They've made some changes in New England. They cut some of the old dead weight from the team. I think the team's going to be better as a whole in front of him. I don't see how you can not look at him at this point. And then at the other end, I'm looking at teams to kind of watch out for. Maybe you can bargain hunt a little bit. I know somebody's asking in chat, is Melia still the starter? Are they going to go with Pulse Camp in Kansas City? I don't know. I can see some rotation. Watch it. If I had to bet, I'd say I'm about 90% sure Melia starts just because of the experience. But I thought he was losing a step last year, and the defense hung him out to dry quite a bit. He doesn't play as well in that situation, so who knows? The other one I'm watching is Atlanta may have the potential for some crazy rotation and see some different stuff. Guzan's coming back from an injury, but they went out and got Quentin Westberg and Diop. I mean, they got two proven starters in MLS, although Diop's kind of a hit or miss proven starter. But, I mean, a lot of teams would trust him to start if they had to. So I don't know what that's going to look like in some teams. So watch those transactions and see what's there. And then the only other one I've got, just because you got to have him on the list, Joe Willis is still in Nashville. Nashville's still a good defense. And they're going back to the Eastern Conference. Make of that what you will. We always kind of hedge our bets towards Eastern Conference teams, or at least I do when I'm picking defenders. The firepower in the East has not been quite the same, or it's not the same dogfight as it is in the West. And I've had good luck doing that, and we always look for those early ones in the keeperoos. Willis going back out to the East is probably a good thing for him overall this year and may bump his stock quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm not going to cut you off, Matt, but I am going to say that I just fact-checked myself, which I should have done before the show, and that LAFC signed Everton's third-string goalkeeper 2 weeks ago. So to me, that means that Crepeau is probably not healthy enough to start. It's not enough of a preseason to know if he is, but to sign, a third-string, he's old, he's 38, but I think it doesn't bode well. But I agree with what Blayne said. I don't know how those leg breaks will affect the whole season. I think he should be the favorite over McCarthy if he's healthy and fit and back to health. But that's an asterisk I admittedly forgot about.
I mean, I agree with most things that you said, Blayne. Kind of ironically, Blayne, I'm gonna go with guys that I would go away from. So I know there was big news made from a financial standpoint about Romain Berkey. I've looked at this, and with my understanding of St. Louis soccer, I'm not confident on that rebuild at all, guys. I think they're way worse than where Charlotte was this time last year, and their coaching staff hasn't come out and said in a German language that they're what. So I would stay away from them. Berkey might maybe on a price tag standpoint, given his quality, has been both expensive for St. Louis FC to acquire and might be expensive in fantasy. But generally, I stay away for expansion teams, especially when it comes to looking at things defensively. And then I know goalkeeper was really the only position that CF Montreal didn't have sorted out last year, and that usually meant a really cheap keeper that you could come up with a switcheroo if you really liked their matchup and everything. But with how much they got rated with Jordi Mihailovic gone, Ishmael Koney's gone as well. I know Kamal Miller's future, I don't know if that had been sorted out as well. And then Kai hasn't sent out a cryptic tweet in the last week, so who knows what's going on with that. I'm worried that Montreal is going to be bad, and it might be really easy for fantasy owners in those first couple weeks, especially when you're stacking with your $10-11 million striker. By the time you get to the backup goalkeeper and it's, oh crap, I need a starter who's going to be $4 million. Can you find a Montreal goalkeeper at that price? Yeah. Are they going to give up 2 to 3 goals to start the season? Yeah. That's all I got.
Yeah.
No, that's all fair. The only thing that I'm going to add, I think you guys have covered the big ones. Keeper's a tough position. I mean, with fantasy, just in general, there's not a lot of variance here. I mean, you can go with a guy who starts, get you some bonus points, and you're going to be within just a very reasonable amount of points for most of those consistent keepers. But the one that I am going to mention is I'm kind of keeping an eye on DC United. I mean, we had Hamid
Tyler
was definitely just the fall, but I mean they did have Alex Bono who's coming over there, and then they've also signed Luis Zamudio, I believe is what it is. So there are options.
Another keeper.
Yeah, because
they signed Tyler Miller too, who was intent right. I mean, he was a starter when he signed.
Right, he was signed as a free agent, but they also have Bono, and they also have this is Zamudio signed from overseas. So they've got a keeper battle there that I wanted to highlight. Yeah. So it's not necessarily just Tyler Miller. There could be some rotations there, and rotations from a fantasy point of view, I don't like, because we've had that with Dallas, we've had that with Cincinnati, we've had that with other teams as well, and it's not good. I mean, it can be great if you're on the right rotation for some kind of keeperoo, but beware with DC is that there are other options, and this is a new team with Rooney. He could be just, especially at the beginning of the season, just trying people out and seeing what fits, and we don't know until it all settles. But otherwise, I have a comment about St. Louis, but I'm going to get that in the defender section. I think it makes more sense there that Matt start to crack that egg open. Okay, let's move on to defenders. Blayne, same thing to you. Exciting, impactful, just interesting from a fantasy point of view that you want to mention?
Not too much, no. I think it's more of go with what we saw at the end of last year. Go with the teams that are stable. I mean, like we said with the goalkeepers, Philly's probably going to be your premier defense. I'm surprised we're almost the end of January and Kai Wagner's still a Union player.
Not a Leeds United player yet.
Yeah, I figured he would be gone for Europe by now. I really did, and I'm shocked he's not. I mean, I kind of wished for fantasy he was gone. That's one less set and forget player that we have to worry about. It makes people think a little bit more, because, I mean, other than price point, who's not going to have him the first week? And even with the price point, you still may have to have him. He's that good. And Philly is a team that I expect to do that. As I mentioned, I think Nashville's going to get a boost going back to the Eastern Conference, even with Romney gone. And with Romney going over to the Revolution, I think you really got to look at one of their players' clean sheet chance, early chance that I'm going to just be betting on quite a bit. I think Montreal's your early bet against, besides St. Louis, obviously. You never trust an expansion team to start MLS. You never do. You get a decent powered offense going at them, you take them, and you bet against them. And then Montreal's just got so much turnover on that roster. They've added some good defenders, but I think they're more attacking pieces, not defending pieces. I don't know what's going to do it. I think it's going to take them a while to get together. The one that's really interesting me, though, and I like the way they played last year, is I'm curious what FC Cincinnati is going to look like this year. Mm-hmm. I've seen some projected lineups of a 3-5-2. But they've got two overlapping fullbacks on that. They could easily drop into a 5-man back line. Reid can correct me if I'm wrong on anything, but that's what I've seen projected. If you get one of those wing backs playing out of position forward in a 3-5-2, that can be huge, because you've got the 3-5-2 is always fun for me in fantasy, because you can drop those two guys back. You can pack 5 behind the ball real easy, and it becomes really hard to break down. And if Cincinnati's really going to go for the counterplay, which I think they can, I think they've got the squad to do it. They can build up on that and really press forward. But I think they're going to try to absorb some pressure. I think this means bonus points for all of your defenders, lots of clean sheet chances early in the season, and bonus points for those attacking fullbacks. I mean, everything about this looks good. Miazga's there to replace Jeff Cameron. I think they've got the central leadership on this. The goalkeeper was fine. I don't think he's anything to highlight, but he's not going to
got a call up to the national team.
Yeah. He's like,
well, the January national team, but yeah, he sure did.
But for fantasy, I don't know that he's anything to really highlight for fantasy,
no.
But he's not one that you're going to highlight and say, oh, he's going to give up stupid goals. He's not going to hurt this defense. I think this defense is going to be quietly really, really good to start the season. And look for those bonus points, because I see a bunch of them if they play that 3-5-2 formation to start it.
Appreciate the shout out. Matt, who are you looking at?
Matt Hedges to Toronto FC. I mean, we're talking like Sean Johnson adding to that, and that team is literally stacked: defender, goalkeeper, midfielder, forward. You've got a viable option that you want, especially if they end up getting rolling. They're a Sean Johnson free agent away from Bob Bradley single-handedly rebuilding and turning this team around in a 12-month period. Really similar shades to me to Drew Moore leaving Colorado in 2015 to join Toronto FC, kind of the one big piece that they didn't really have anchored out. And you have him leading the middle, barking at people in a back three as well. I think stabilizing things, making things easier on Michael Bradley, who I think is now MB 74 as opposed to MB 90 probably. So I love that pickup, and I think that's going to be really good as Bob Bradley says, like, okay, last year was what it was. Now we're actually going to be good. I agree with you, Blayne. I think the first month of the season, you want to make a safe bet. You should have between the two teams 4 or 5 Philadelphia and LAFC players if you can afford it. And then one of the more under the radar moves that I saw in terms of an American coming back was Kyle Duncan, former homegrown with New York Red Bulls, came back from KV Ostende. I'm not sure how to pronounce that entirely, but he's coming back, and he was always a fullback that I like generally, and then certainly in fantasy. So you talk about him and him being Kyle Duncan, and then John Tolkien on the other side being a little bit forward. I can't guarantee that he's going to get a lot of clean sheet points, but he's probably going to get a bunch of bonuses and then maybe the occasional assist as well. Red Bull Chaos is going to Red Bull Chaos, and Kyle Duncan was a very good fullback for that system when it came to MLS Fantasy.
Big time.
Ashley.
Yeah, I had a big pulse on this because I thought for a minute I was going to get to come on here and brag about it, but Aaron Long went to LAFC, not Seattle. It's fine. We're over it. Didn't want him. But that's a really interesting addition to that back line for me. I always felt like Chiellini was more of like a spectacle signing. He sat out for so many times for so many reasons that was never clarified. And then they went and loaned or sold or tammed out the other young center back that they had. I think he should be starting, but I'm interested to see how healthy he can stay. Aaron Long, for a couple of seasons in fantasy, was a really consistent bonus point, goal scoring, Walker Zimmerman-esque center back. Last season with the injuries, he wasn't quite there. When he was playing, he was productive. But like Matt said, Red Bull's going to Red Bull. So it wasn't as consistent in his last season there, but that's definitely a player. And like we've all kind of said, a back line I'm definitely paying attention to. Blayne talked about Nashville briefly, but I think Walker is going to continue to be a decent pointed defender. It depends, now that his center back pairing has adjusted. Sometimes that can kind of take a toll on fantasy point productions, but he's still someone that I definitely am going to pay attention to. Miles Robinson is returning to health for Atlanta. I think that should be a good, firming up for that defense that got real sloppy for some time with all the injuries and things like that. I don't know who's going to be in the net for them. Like Blayne also said, Guzan coming back from injury as well. But Miles Robinson's a player who pre-injury I thought we would probably see at the World Cup. So his fantasy point production kind of reflected that as well. So I know there's some other good defenders down there in the Dirty South, but Robinson was one that I was really sad to see go. And I feel like that whole back line really crumbled after he got hurt with Brad Guzan. So I'm warily paying attention to them. Just to kind of add on to what everybody said about Cincy, one of the players that always really interested me when he was at NYCFC was Matarrita, who got hurt in the early part of last season, right, Reid, for Cincy, and was out. I think he came in the play at the end of the year, right? Just briefly, he was a sub.
Yep.
Yeah. And in that formation that Blayne was talking about, he is probably going to be my go-to if they're playing in a wingback formation.
Okay, I'm going to ask because I saw him on the transfers outside of the transfer tracker. I thought he went on loan somewhere, but he may be back in. He may have been transferred and loaned back. I don't know what's up with him.
Well, then if he's gone, I won't pick him up. But if he's not, I didn't see that.
I've got my hands full feeding the baby. Otherwise, I just
the baby excuse
if he's
again.
gone,
with
he
this guy.
should not even be in the game. Unlike certain players in MLS Fantasy, they get transferred in the summer and somehow are still there to be selected. Which is great when every team is busy and you want to set up an auto route. But still.
I enjoy it. I pick those guys up all the time.
Okay,
I mean, we should reference.
Here's what I was
Is he
saying.
gone? Okay.
Option was declined, and they do not have him listed as a re-sign back with.
I saw that they did. Reid?
And that may be out of date. This is not always up to date. So maybe, because I've got another transfer that I thought I saw, but it's not in this list for the midfielder section. So,
hey Blayne, let's see what SB Nation reporter has written about this to see whether or not he's in with the team in preseason training.
Oh, is he?
We don't know.
That's
They're
what
fired.
I'm asking.
Yeah.
I don't. Did Cincy have an SB Nation site? I'm sorry, I don't even know.
Okay, let's check Cincy Soccer Talk then.
Yeah.
Cincy Soccer Talk would be the go-to.
Okay.
One other kind of pile down I will give is RSL trading away Ander Herrera for me. I wasn't a big RSL defense picker in the first place, but that kind of took a lot of win. There's a couple options there, I suppose. People like, what was it, Bodley? Justin Glad for me has been a real womp in fantasy for a little while, so RSL might be a defense I choose to pick against in the first part of the year, but we'll see.
So Monterita's gone. He's joined.
You guys.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's joined another team, and I don't know. I think it's. I don't know if it's. I don't know. But last I've seen it, he's gone and he's maybe playing overseas now, but maybe a Ukrainian team. I'm looking at his Instagram or his Twitter. Right.
Radul Montoria leaves MLS, joins Ukraine side SC Dnipro. Bunch of consonants.
Right. Yeah. No, I didn't even.
Okay.
I didn't even try. Yeah. So
How bad is the situation where you choose to go to a current warring country rather than play in MLS?
Yeah. Now,
no one could have picked him up. Oh, what's Ranch saying?
Ranchinator has one for you, Ashley, and this is a name I like. Brody for RSL.
Brody. I said Brodely or
okay.
Bodley.
Okay.
I'm still not. Ander Herrera was a better.
Herrera was, but without him on the other side, Brody may get more of that attacking presence on it.
Yeah.
He was one of those sleeper picks for a lot of people. We didn't talk about him enough last year. We really didn't as a podcast.
Sure.
He could get those attacking bonus points and they could run the ball at the other side. He's the only one I'm really looking out for besides Glad, but Glad's so defensive minded. It's like Brody's that offensive player that I think could be a little bit cheaper. Glad's going to be premium priced.
So the only few things that I have to add is I am actually cautiously looking at Atlanta. They shed a lot of defenders, including their top scoring fantasy defender. They've added in several new goalkeepers, clearly looking at the Guzan situation. So I have question marks around that defensive unit with Atlanta, especially with all the changes that have been going on. So I think from a fantasy point of view, they're a wait and see for me as far as what that turns into. On the other side, I know we talked about Hedges leaving, but he's basically, I guess, been replaced by Ibiaga coming in from LAFC. I think that's one to keep an eye on and see what happens there. Hedges was not as prolific of a fantasy point generator this year as he has been of years past. So I don't know if a new scenery change up in Toronto is going to be helpful for that, or if that's something that we can expect Ibiaga to return back to. But there are some changes there, so I'm interested in seeing how that works. Dallas traditionally does have some solid defensive options that have been worth looking at. And then the only other thing I'm going to mention, the two things I'm going to mention, just to mention them, Montreal picked up Campbell, picked up Herrera, but there's a lot of early dumpster fire signs with Montreal, with the coach leaving and then the catastrophe they've had with, I guess, the U22 team, or they just, a lot's going on in Montreal that have a lot of just caution there. So, you may see some transfers in. They've lost a lot of players, and so just to mention it right now, the defensive section, a hard pass right now.
Let's put it this way: Montreal hired a replacement coach and fired him the next day.
Right.
Yeah. I should also, we haven't pointed this out yet, that Collins, a fantasy favorite, has left us in MLS for NYCFC.
Yeah.
So it's another
that-
defense I'm a little wary of without Sean
that
John too.
whole unit, I had him up. Tinnerholm's gone. Gray was replacing him last year, but Tinnerholm is gone. I know we'll talk about it more as we transfer into the midfielders, but they have lost a lot of their big playmakers, a lot of their big names. Just to go through it before we get there, Maxi's gone. Santi Rodriguez is gone. Acevedo is gone. Like, those are the
Sean
guys.
John, Callens.
Yeah, Callens along the defensive line. Like, this is a team that's going to be completely different, and I don't think you can trust them at the back half at all. I
don't trust any team that sells Tati, and I think you guys know that about me.
Yeah, but I mean, they lost everybody who held the ball, everybody who shielded the defense, and half their defense. Like, this is...
It's a rebuild. Question a rebuild. You question a new team. You question an expansion team. Let's question some rebuild teams. Yeah.
And we always say, go with what you know from last year. Well, everything you know from last year is thrown out the window there.
And then I also want to address St. Louis, as we already mentioned them before. Complete rebuild for a brand new team, of course. We saw what happened with FC Cincinnati, and the thing that is kind of giving me warning signs with them is they've got a lot of people from their two team, from the USL, that they're bringing up. That did not work for Cincinnati
or Minnesota
at all, for many teams. But in recent memory, did not work.
Don't
for
tell
Cincinnati
Christian I said that
at all. They have some other signings, but a lot of that team is going to be young and untested. And as with the general fantasy advice for most of these expansion teams, it is going to be a team to bet against at the beginning. So you may find some cheap options, you may find a diamond in the rough, but at this time, at least from our point of view, with a lot of players being untested in this system, it is looking like it will be the usual trend for an expansion team.
But every expansion team has a Ben Bender, you know? You just gotta find.
Did Cincinnati have one? I don't know about that.
No.
And then I will address one question we had in chat about Chicago. So the thing about Chicago is their new signings, not a lot jumps out to me as, hey, this guy's going to have solid fantasy impact. Chicago had some good fantasy scores for their defenders. They were often good options that people overlooked. They did lose one of their top fantasy point producers, so I don't know if one of their two new signings is going to be able to replicate that. And there is their goalkeeper is also gone, who tended to be a good go-to as well. So I have questions with Chicago. They would probably be a wait and see for me as far as fantasy goes right now, but definitely a viable option if you see a good matchup for them, just based on until I see some preseason stuff. Matt.
Two possible. First one, defensively on St. Louis FC. There, Reid. I just lost it. Where is he? Why don't Tim Parker? I don't know how many clean sheets but is he going to get a bunch of bonuses because there's nobody else there to head the ball? A decent question. If I could propose maybe a potential future Ben Bender, although we haven't gotten to forwards and wingers. Nicholas Gioacchini, 22-year-old U.S. international, is with St. Louis FC and a forward and a winger, so I imagine probably playing out wide, so he could be getting the few bonuses and the few chance creations. And again, being a young player on an expansion team, not a whole lot of MLS experience outside of a little bit of time with Orlando City B, probably a cheap pickup early on in the season. Just my two guesses.
Yeah, no, great call outs. Well, let's move on to midfielders since we are flirting with that. And Matt, go for it.
Yeah, I'll start in the Rocky Mountains because you've got two big ones. I think the most important midfielders for both RSL and Colorado are going to be back and going to be healthy. Damir Krajloc, folks, has not started a game in MLS since April 17th of last year, and he started 3 games all of last season. And so he's coming in and he says that he feels better since the injury whatsoever. So you're talking about a team that managed to make the playoffs, has had some decent departures that Ashley just mentioned earlier. But if you're talking about getting a dark horse MVP candidate on a team that actually made the playoffs as well, first of all, like comeback player that your favorite already for me, probably. But then coming into that RSL midfield, he should be able to boss it and be Karate Krajloc. And the Rapids midfield is going to look completely different from what it was last year, folks. As soon as Jack Price went down with that calf injury and everything, it was basically Brian Acosta slipping around and trying to do everything, and then a bunch of other disorganization in front of him. Cole Bassett back, and the one thing that he learned how to do that he got better at in his time in the Netherlands, despite not playing a whole lot, was possession on the ball and physicality. Connor Ronan coming in, who's basically Jack Price 4 years ago. If you're talking more than $500,000, less than $1 million transfer fee, starter in the championship, was not playing at all for Wolves in the Premiership as well, and Jack Price really liked him as well. So Price back healthy, he should be dropping dimes on corners. Connor Ronan as well, and then if Cole Bassett can get a goal streak whatsoever going, then he's goal Bassett again. And given how under the radar these guys are as Rapids players, Price is probably the only one that you can bet on regularly is going to start the season off at $8-9 million a year. I'll let other people talk about Evander because I know they've been talking about him. Reid, question for you. Martin Ojeda is listed on MLSsoccer.com as a midfielder. I've known him mostly as a left winger. Do we know if he's going to be a midfielder or a forward in the game? We
do not know about that. So I will say right now that's a good call out. The tags that we see at MLSsoccer.com do not necessarily and will not necessarily carry over to the game. I do know that I can freely share that is something that Skylar has often reached out to me in the past just to sort of check and pick people's brains about some of those decisions. So it is definitely something that can be influenced by community. So if there are players that you see that you think may be tagged wrong or you have strong opinions about them, let me know, and I'm happy to bring it up to Skylar because, like I said, we do usually have some sort of like chat session at some point being like, am I missing anything, or at least bringing up some key players that are like, hey, is this absolutely ridiculous? So, but I can say for sure at this point, those are not necessarily reflective of what will be in the game.
Matt, one question for you. Are we looking at a double pivot with Price and Ronan in Colorado to start the season? Is that what we're expecting, with Ronan being a little more defensive minded?
No, I think Ronan's more going to be a pure number 8 if you look at his analytics and what he did at Wolves. So I would see him more, I guess, Cole Bassett is what he was, what Mark Anthony Kaye was, what Brian Galvan was supposed to be last year. I guess Connor Ronan's then the Kellen Acosta in this situation. He is a little bit more pass heavy and he likes to ping long balls too. So I would say the average of Connor Ronan and Brian Acosta is where Kellen Acosta is. The one thing that I would be kind of worried about is Robin Fraser really likes to rotate depending on situations, and then in that I think it's the only consistent regular starter you're going to see every single Rapids game is going to be Jack Price. On the road at Seattle, for example, to open the season, I could see it being more of a 4-3-3 with Brian Acosta and then almost a double pivot with Cole Bassett in front of them. And then on the front foot, say against a San Jose, a Charlotte, a struggling DC United team, then they would be more 3-4-3, especially if I know we didn't talk about him because he's not official yet, if Maxo, the center back, actually comes in as well.
Okay.
But I would say if you're comparing them from a fantasy standpoint, Ronan's closer to Bassett than he is Price. Ronan is not kicking Jack Price off corners. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
No, that's good to know, because when I saw that signing, my first thought was, is this a Price backup in case that happens again? And I did have my joke in my notes was one of the best new additions for Colorado with this season was the return of Jack Price, because for those of you who might be new or just want the reminder, Jack Price seems to always do well in fantasy and in a position that you don't necessarily expect, like in that more defensive tends to be, but he kind of plays everywhere. I guess it's really not fair to call him a defensive mid, but
he's there.
Well, he gets
pretty much. He gets bonus points, he gets assists, he gets some goals and stuff. And taking those corners is what helps.
Lucky defensive mid who gets all those defensive bonus points that we love them for on double game weeks, but he gets all the attacking points because he's on almost every set piece.
Right.
Yeah, so the Rapids DP is corners instead of having an actual DP striker. And so then you guarantee, as opposed to thinking like, are we sure that Sebastian Blanco is going to pass it to Fernando Adi to score a goal and everything? Jack Price is providing the assist to whoever it is that's scoring.
Yeah. So remember to take a look at Jack Price, because he always seems to do well. And I'm always like, no, Jack Price, no. What? He's not a Barrios for me. Like I like that Jack Price does well, because I'm always but it just always confuses me to no end. Sorry, Ashley. I just had to mention that since we were on the Colorado train.
It's fair. I think one of the first things that I was trying to figure out the best section to put this in, and I just Garth Lagerwey has come into Atlanta and just is cleaning house. Like, I feel like he is really trying to come in, and I don't know if he and Pineda have some sort of a vision. There was a lot of locker room unrest last season, we know. That affected a lot of the players we have come to know and love in MLS fantasy. And so I'm very interested to what the end game is, or what the long term is there, for Garth and Gonzo. Moreno went out on loan. That's a player a lot of us looked at. Almeida technically won a World Cup. Perhaps that elevates him a little bit more. I mean, he was there. He subbed in, right, guys? It counts. That's a player that I really turned to a lot in the end of the season last year. But they're also exercising options in a way that is a little confusing to me. Heinemann, I thought, was a really promising player, and they just kind of mutually agreed to dissolve. They brought in Etienne Jr. and recalled Wolf. I don't know. There's just a lot of shifting in that midfield for me. And the Atlanta midfield, plus when he's healthy, Josef combo was something that I think a lot of us in fantasy really kind of would lean to, especially at home when they were at home at the Benz. So I'm not putting them in like a wait and see category. I'm just not quite sure what that's going to shape up like. I'm sure Patrick would know more, but when Garth came into Seattle, it was more about a lot of signings and not a lot of house cleaning. And so this is a side of Garth I haven't quite seen yet, but he really came in and just kind of gave a lot of people the boot. To bring it back to me, as I like to always do, as a homer, I'm very excited to see Joao Paulo already up and ready to go. There were rumblings that had Seattle made the playoffs, he was going to be ready to contribute, which was mind-blowing to me based on that injury. So he was a fantasy player that was very consistent in the game for a while, and how he and Nico Ladero would kind of alternate. And so that's definitely a player for the season that I'm paying attention to. And I think we slept on this a lot, and reluctantly would comment when they'd succeed, but FC Dallas's midfield is like good, you guys. I mean, I think we don't really talk about it enough. Areola, Sebastian Lletget, they plug a couple different pieces into the middle of their midfield. Jesus Ferreira, I think that might be a midfield to look at. I'm not quite sure how it will finalize, but they've got a lot of very good pieces to that midfield. I think Reid and I have said this like ad nauseum before, that FC Dallas tends to be a team where you don't know who's going to hit, and I still think that might be the case. But I'm very interested to see how a lot of those kind of like B+ quality fantasy players, when you put a bunch of B+ players on a team, you can get A+ production, right? So I am really interested to see how that midfield and offense comes together. And then I don't think I'm taking this from anybody else. I'm really excited to see Puig for a whole season. He kind of came in, like, it was kind of like a joke in the beginning. We were like, I'm going to pick up Puig. And then we were like, no, everybody should pick him up. Like, the bonus point production, goal contributions, insane. I still think, Elliot, with the people the Galaxy are also bringing in and putting out, I'm interested to see how they shape up. I don't know how much longer Chicharito has in the tank at his level. But I'm very interested to see Ricky Puig this season. And then my last little contribution is, because we have seen it happen before, is the DP tag going to hurt or help Gazdag? Because he's definitely been a consistent fantasy choice, a 10 that we all know and love. He's very involved in a lot of different aspects of the game that can contribute to his fantasy point production. But we have seen sometimes players get those DP tags, and the play can change a little bit or go crazy. So I'm definitely not betting against him. Please don't feel like that's what I'm saying. I am just interested to see how that change to his salary basically affects what we see from him on the field. Matt, hit me with the whatever Galaxy thing you have to say to us.
Brandon Vasquez scored for the U.S., so potentially
you guys!
he's in So potentially he's in form then, Reid, if we're picking him up
He's
and
gotta
doing
be.
the triple-headed FC Cincinnati attack, other than me obviously being no Lucho. But
Yeah.
so there's that. But no, I agree with. I think especially with some of the departures that you've seen, the Galaxy did transfer Grandsir to Le Herve. It's the one that's got like the weird like sea monster logo that's in the second division in France that Bob Bradley coached at randomly.
Yeah.
So
and then Cabral, right? Who else?
No, Cabral went to the Rapids. We'll talk about him in a minute.
Sorry.
Certainly, I think the midfield is set up for Riqui Puig, like everything to like orbit around what he's doing from an attacking standpoint. Like
as it should.
You want a really good player on a good team to where like they're the missing piece in the puzzle, or even if the team's not actually being successful, you want everything to flow through them so that ultimately they get the bulk of the points. So that example is like Emmanuel Reynoso. You only pick up Robin Lod if it's in a double game week and you know he's starting up top and Reynoso is healthy. If Reynoso is not healthy, you're not picking up anybody other than maybe one of the defenders or St. Clair on Minnesota, as opposed to say what you would have when as opposed to picking Carlos Vela with LAFC where they're stacked well, I guess you don't have to, it doesn't matter now because Gareth Bale's not on the team anymore, but when there was a doubt about who was starting or how the rotation was, when LAFC was clicking in years past and Carlos Vela was starting and playing 90 minutes and not getting subbed out and being upset about getting subbed out, you know that he was going to get his, but also everybody else was going to get his. Riqui Puig is the midfield equivalent of that. Anything that's going on in the midfield is running through him, and then particularly if he's playing well and Chicharito's playing well, you got to stack those two next to each other. I would not start the season that way. If I had to pick right now who I would want between those two in the Rose Bowl game against LAFC, I'll take Puig.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah, looking forward to more of him. Blayne,
Puig and Vela in those two would be mine.
Yeah. So I'm a lot more conservative on midfielders to start the season. I say go with the tried and true. Look for the names that were playing well last year that didn't have a ton of turnover on their team. So Mukhtar's and Heel are right there at the top. I think you add Blessing into that Revolution team. Just clean up some of the dead weight. I think Bruce has got the team building going in the right direction. I was shaking my head last year when he brought in all his old Galaxy cast-offs that weren't worth picking up for most MLS teams. Like, why is he bringing those guys back? This year, it looks like he's actually building a competent roster that's not his old favorites that he's just trying to give final minutes to and see out their careers. So I think Heel comes back into prominence, especially if he can stay healthy. Gazdag, I don't care about the DP tag or not. I think it's just that's a team that is going to have so much of the ball. I think he's going to have the opportunity to do so much. And then Ladero climbs up that list too. You go with he's a playmaker on a good team, Ashley.
How many times did you pick him up last year? Because I think I picked him up. He was not hurt. Joao Paulo was hurt. He was fine.
Well, Paulo coming back is a huge thing too.
Yes. I'll give you that.
You solidify that central midfield. You get all that. Like, go with the tried and true. Joao Paulo proved that Ladero was good. But I also don't like taking risks on a lot of the new guys when you don't know what's going to happen. I'll throw it out there. Cam's mentioned it already, but Tommy for Kansas City came in and Sporting became the highest scoring offense in MLS from the moment Tommy started. They scored more goals to finish the season than anybody else in that time frame. That is huge. Now, that didn't always turn into production for him, but we're hearing Kingdom may not be healthy to start the season. They're going to slowly work him in, so I believe that's Tommy's job to lose up top, and that midfield just looks a little better. The defense looks a lot better than it did. Cut some dead weight there. So that's going to help. And then I got a couple of budget picks that I like, and one of them is pending a transfer that Tom Bogert actually hinted at last week, and that's Joaquin Torres from Montreal is rumored to be joining Philly. They were supposed to be finalizing that deal. I'm surprised it hasn't been announced yet. I'm hoping that doesn't fall through. But if he shows up in Philly, we're hearing anything from second striker to backup 10 to whatever. If he gets in that starting lineup with Gazdag, I'm all for it. He was money when Mihailovic was playing well. He is a great second playmaking forward or midfielder to have. If he's got that midfielder tag and is playing advanced, I love it. And I think his price point is going to come in between that 7 and 8 million. And on that same token, I like Memo Rodriguez going to the Galaxy. He was criminally underused by Houston. I don't understand why a guy of his caliber wasn't starting for a dumpster fire like Houston. They kept rotating their guys, never let anybody get any rhythm. He was young. He had promise. You play him. If the Galaxy will start him every game and he starts at that 6 to 7 where I'm hoping he's at, easy early season addition to my lineup as you play the value game. I think he's going to be good for 4 or 5 a game. And as a cheap player that you're trying to build value with, he's not going to hurt you in the early game. And he's one guy I just have to keep an eye on because I think he's going to be that cheap.
All right, good stuff. I can't believe we've gotten this far without mentioning 2 players that just my DMs or my replies were just overwhelmed with when I teased this. One, Evander at Portland. I think that has to be one of the
because I was going to bring that up.
I know. I think, but you didn't mention JP at the beginning.
I had to leave you something, Reid.
Thanks. Evander for sure is definitely someone that everyone's keeping their eye on. Portland, I mean, playmaker, great. Was Denmark or had great goal production there. I mean, I guess it's kind of slotting into be what Valeri was in the past.
New Valeri.
With that, exactly. So keep an eye on him. Will likely be pricey. And then on the complete opposite side of the United States, going over there to Ojeda down in Orlando, another winger that they are very high on. Lots of people are very high on. A lot of good scoring and assisting potential right there. So some good attacking options down in Orlando there to keep an eye on. Those are just 2 of the top ones. Other ones I'm going to mention real quick. Tyler Wolff got recalled for Atlanta. He was a very early budget option that we had in fantasy last year that had some decent results. That was filling in during some injuries. But if he has that role again, maybe keep an eye on him. Could be a nice little differential right there. And then also, again, 2 more DC options to pick up. A lot of changes there because Rooney coming in, again, not go-to, but maybe a watch and see. But Pedro Santos has gone over to DC. They have him tagged as a defender, but I'm mentioning here in the midfielder section because, I mean, oftentimes he would fill in for Valeri up in Columbus and played that role sometimes. So position up in the air right there, but I think you could keep an eye on that.
He's been listed that way because he played the bulk of his minutes last year as a left back for Columbus.
Right,
but he was primarily a right winger, I think, for them when Zella was in.
Yes, there was a lot of weird stuff going on in Columbus back there. So, and then also keep an eye on, I guess, what is it, Klitsch, who's come in from Kleet. Thank you. Can't get through one episode without missing one of them. But yeah, coming in from Leeds, had some good success there. Rooney very high on him, helping them with their promotion. So another one to keep on. Just a lot of changes at DC. So I mean, maybe hit up Tyler and see he likes.
He's going to get a lot of yellow cards though, so just be wary of that. I've watched a lot of Leeds the past few years, even before they got back up to the Prem, and he's gonna bust you a little bit.
That's fine. We enjoy that. But yeah, a couple more names in midfield to keep an eye on. But I think you guys have touched on a lot of them. So let's move on to our final section. Forwards. Ashley.
Guys, I think I am just accidentally switching allegiances, much to my family, husband, and city's dismay. But LAFC's starting front line. Who are you gonna? I don't even know what it's gonna look like. Supposedly they're shopping, or he's unhappy. Chicho Arango, which what? How? Why? Want to talk most goal scoring production since a certain period. No one's scored more goals than him since he came here. No one. But apparently that might not stay. Wherever he goes, I will follow. Vela re-signed. Wow. Bouanga looked great at the end of last season. Apparently they signed another striker of how great that person, they'll be. I don't know, Christian Tello. I don't know. The Brian Rodriguez out, was never a big fan, especially in fantasy. I think that, again, I sound obsessed with them, but from a fantasy point production, I'm just kind of salivating over what could be from that front three. So definitely where I plan to start out, especially after bringing home an MLS Cup. And then I think this was on all of our lists, but I'm going to say it because I'm going first. Josef to Miami. I am excited for that. He did not get to play last season the way he wanted to. There was clearly a rift between him and Gonzalo Pineda. I know he's not the Josef of the Miguel Almiron days in fantasy production, but he's still Josef Martinez, playing with Campana, playing in that system, playing for that fan base. I see a lot from him. And, Inter Miami tended to be very inconsistent from a fantasy and regular MLS production standpoint last season. But I'm really excited to see what he does down there. And I think that's going to be a good fit for him. And then the Hebert signing to me is intriguing. Obviously, in my household, we've talked about it ad nauseum. Raul Ruidiaz can't put a whole season together lately. He's still producing. I'm not trying to take away from him, but there's the Seattle fan base constantly follows his Instagram stories for what new injury he's rehabbing that no one's talked about. And so bringing in Hebert, I know there was a point of last season before Magno went off that Blayne was talking about how no Tati, go Hebert. He scores when he starts. Yes, you did. I will find.
I know. No. I'm
don't shake your head at me.
I'm shaking my head at City. That's.
Yeah, I know. It's so I think it could be a sneaky within conference or within league signing for the Sounders. There's a talk of a change in formation. How do you play them all? On that same note, Jordan Morris got re-signed, so he'll be with Seattle for the foreseeable future. He and Christian Roldan. How does that play into formation? To me, Hebert should not be a bench signing, but I don't know if he'll come to Seattle and be a starter. So I'm interested to see how that comes in because, I think I kind of poo-pooed Blayne at the time because he was making a comparison to Tati, which I don't think you can say Tati and Hebert in the same breath, but Hebert does score goals. And so I'm interested to see how that might play out. And then I think like a lot of us, I'm really excited to see Cucho at Columbus for a full season and see what he can produce.
Ashley, I'm wondering, I feel like from a fantasy standpoint, mostly due to playing time, you get low ceiling or high ceiling, but a low floor from Freddie Montero and then Chu. What do you think all of the movements and everything mean for those two from a fantasy standpoint?
I think if you talk to any person who's ever picked him up or watches the Sounders, Leo Chu's production is garbage. He should be a lot more than he is. We as Sounders fans, it's like so many people were really. He was one of the only players that they've done an unveiling for that didn't start. Do you know what I mean? Like when they've done unveiling, they didn't do one for Raul. Like do you know what I mean? Like it's very interesting to me how that has worked out. And there was a time last year where I kept plugging him as a cheap bench option. He was like 4.0 for a while, but getting in there. I think the signing of Hebert will limit Freddie Montero, but Will Bruin is also gone. And so I think with injury and age, somehow, because he doesn't start, Freddie Montero becomes that sub as a rotational sub. And I think we've all kind of seen how that can produce. So for me, I think a lot of it comes down to what system they go back to and what formation that they play. Because my husband spent more time than I cared to give him, but I tried to kind of, pretend to give attention to mock formations. How are you going to get Jordan Morris, Christian Roldan, Nico Ladero, Raul Ruidiaz, Hebert, and Joe Paulo on the field at the same time? And the answer is you can't. So how is that going to look? And how are they all going to get on the field? I don't see Chu or Montero starting at all unless there's rotation. But I agree with you. I think for Freddie, at least, there's a good option to score. But that might also be Hebert. He might not be starting. And so that might be a sneaky, bench play in a situation where Rui doesn't go because of rotation or whatever. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how things shake up now that they've kind of solidified those Jordan Morris, because a lot of people thought Jordan Morris might leave. That was kind of the rumblings post World Cup, was they couldn't sign them both, but they did. So how that shakes up will be interesting from a fantasy point perspective, because this might end up being a Dallas who grabs the points, who's going to grab the points from that midfield and striker system. So
Yeah. It wouldn't be good for a fantasy standpoint, but there's like an MLS tactics like fanfic I would almost want to write about like bringing back the amoeba midfield with Christian Roldan doing the Brad Evans kind of stuff.
Yes.
It would be fun to watch that I think would also tank Roldan's anything that wasn't just like minutes played and then basic bonuses to where like he's like he'll guaranteed get you 4 but never more than 6.
Yes, exactly.
Which is basically what Brad Evans was, which made him reliable at like 7.5 mil.
Yeah, at the high end, 7.5 mil for him. Yeah.
Blayne.
Yeah. First guy on my list this year, is Agata. The guy was on fire. Everything in preseason looks like he's in the same form. Agata himself is not a spectacular player, but he is great at putting balls on net. And the service he gets from Johnny Russell and Shallowy and everything is just insane. And he puts those on frames so often. He's just going to continue to light it up as long as the service is good. So I say that take Agata with the service around him. If you start seeing Johnny Russell get injured because he's going to be 33 to start the season and listed as a forward, like, okay, you may start having a little pause. But as long as his supply is healthy, then he's going to get goals. Guy that really intrigues me this year, and it's a team that we said was just a striker away last year. Where were their goals coming from? Corey Burke has gone to the Red Bulls from Philly. He is a guy that he puts balls in the net. Like, that's what he does. He doesn't play enough to really have cracked the radar, but when he's out there, he scores. He works hard, and if he's got the service behind him, which I think Red Bulls had the service last year, they just couldn't score. If he's the guy that can score for them, then he is going to score a lot of goals this year. That's why I'm watching him early. Locks likes it too, but everybody's talking about Josef going to Miami, but I'm wondering what that does for Campagna this year. Campagna looked really, really good last year at certain stretches, but he's going to be the number 2 striker out there. Martinez is going to take all the attention from the defense. I think he could be locked up a little bit more. He's still going to do Martinez things and score goals. But I think Campagna may be the biggest benefactor from Martinez coming over. I think he could see a lot more open looks or a lot better looks. He'll get the second defender, not the primary guy trying to shut down your number 1 attacker. As a Kansas City fan, we were always one that shut down the primary attacker, and we didn't let guys like Giovinco score on us. It was somebody else that always burned us. And I think that's the way everybody's going to approach Miami. Don't let Martinez do it. Make him prove that somebody else can beat us. And I think Campagna has the tools to do it. I really do. So I'm looking at him, and he's going to be cheaper. I'm super curious about what Etienne Jr. is going to do and if he's going to be listed as a forward for Atlanta. I think he'll see a lot of the ball regardless of what it looks like. And then Zardes going to Austin.
Wherever he is. Go.
But this is actually more than just my fanboying over Zardes because I do. I hate Max Urruti. Max Urruti is a fine player, but he never scores for me. He fluffs easy shots. He gets in great positions and then never scores. It's one of the most infuriating things. He's my Barrios, really.
He's your Barrios, too.
Wow. And I think Urruti, for as good as he has been, he has never proven to be a consistent enough goal scorer to jump from that really good player to elite MLS player. And Urruti looked really good for Austin at times, got in dangerous positions and whatnot.
I think you can say Austin deserves a better striker a more consistent striker than Max Urruti. Max Urruti is like a journeyman, right, of MLS. They deserve, which Zardes might be too. But
you give Austin somebody who can score consistently up there, and one-time balls. I don't want to see his first touch. He just one-times them. That's what Zardes does. If you get somebody like that in there and they can get some goals, I mean, they're a potential Supporters Shield caliber team. Now, I know their defense is a little changed up this year, and we didn't talk about them on that side because who knows what's going to happen back there. But I think with the players around him, Zardes is set to feast. He's one of those guys that, again, as good as the team around him, you give him good service, he's going to give you results. And then I'm all in on Cincinnati on this one to start the season. Lucho's still there. I didn't think he was going to be there, but he's back. Vasquez and Brenner look good. Pick your poison on that one. Depending on where they come in priced at, it'll make a lot of difference to start the season. But Vasquez and Brenner we're just scoring like crazy, and Lucho's still there. That's just an offense I'm expecting to go off to start the season. And hopefully you pick the right one, or take both if you don't know, because I don't know that we have a ton of great options all around. Although it looks like last year we ended with forwards being everywhere, and we wanted 5 of them compared to midfielders.
Yeah.
So we could start the season that way too, and it's trying to pick who's got the best game. And then I'll touch on this. I think my Never Vela days are over. I made the point last year.
You bought merch. You can't walk back merch.
It's going to get retired and put on the wall.
Okay.
No, it's one of those. I did it to prove a point. I stuck by what I said. But if he's healthy and there's a lot less variance in the lineup, and I'm more concerned. I was more concerned with the midfield. We didn't know who was going where. It was always different service. It was always different guys. It was always a different role for these guys. Wingers, forwards, they don't like having to play a different rotation all the time. You can't get a good rhythm. And so I think if there's less variance in the LAFC lineup as a whole, especially in the attacking half, I think Vela is going to come back to where he was a lot more, because he'll get in a rhythm with these guys and do that. That was my problem last year. But if enough people tweet at me to keep the Never Vela thing going, I might do that. But it was a one-season thing for me. I made a statement and I owned it. I'm not going to hamstring my fantasy chances every year just because of a statement I made the year before. And I'm sure Reid would pick up Barrios at least once if the matchup was really, really good.
No.
Ashley, will you be starting Brad
Conviction.
Smith week 1?
Oh my gosh, I love that signing. Who do they play? Maybe. He's coming back from injury. So, no, I won't. But Brad Smith with that Houston team, once he gets a rhythm, which I do think he will, yes. But not, they got rid of Parker. Like I said, he's coming back from injury. I love me some Brad Smith everywhere he's been.
They are at FC Cincinnati on the 25th. So, okay. The battle of Ashley and always play Brad Smith, and then me deciding whether or not to play Lucho, and then I get him the 1 week that he gets a yellow card and gets suspended for a DGW, I suppose. So
sure. I guess we didn't touch on that. I won't go into it. But that was a good defensive signing for Houston, I would say.
We should track that. So this would have to be like FC Cincinnati playing the Rapids or LAFC, and then Houston involved in that for our 4 general rules that we have about Reid and Barrios, me and Lucho, Blayne and Vela, and then Ashley and Brett. Like, who ends up being more right on that? And then we can dispel our preconceived notions based on the actual data that we see.
I would love to. I'll champion that task. I'll start making a spreadsheet.
Okay, sounds good. On that note, Blayne, you said most of the things that I wanted to say about Gyasi Zardes. I think it's a perfect fit systematically, and obviously very similar to where he was most successful during his time at Columbus in terms of chance creating number 10, good team in front of him. He's going to get high quality opportunities. You put him in that situation with the LA Galaxy. You put him in that situation with Austin. At times with Diego Rubio when their attack was actually good last year. He's going to get goals as well. I wouldn't have him over Driussi, but absolutely he's going to be a fantastic 1-2 punch. I really like Carlos Andres Gomez going to RSL, given some of the exits they've had and everything. I've got some questions about what's happening at the center forward position, especially if Damir Krylach is healthy and they actually like him as a false 90 kind of person. But Gomez coming in as a right wing as the most expensive acquisition in RSL history, you have to think that that's going to be successful with that team and their style of play. For those wondering from a Rapids standpoint, the 2 preseason friendlies that the Rapids have had down in Mexico against second division Mexican teams, Kevin Cabral has started both games on the left wing. They've had a traditional number 9, and then usually there's been a line change, if you will, at the 30th minute, where more of a first team comes on and Rubio's played a little bit of false nine, a little bit of midfield. That's the one real question I have now from a Rapids attacking standpoint. I don't know that it matters in terms of what Rubio's doing independently, because we saw both when he was a forward and when he was at the top of the midfield three, he got his in both situations. But what does that mean for that forward, given if it's Calvin Harris, that's an interesting situation. If it's Darren Yoppie, that's going to be a dirt cheap forward standpoint. But Cabral looks to be exclusively a left winger, so I imagine there's going to be a lot of similarities to what he does with the Galaxy. He's going to create a whole lot of chances, but also he's going to miss sitters and get 3 points instead of 9 points. So that's something that I'm thinking about. But those are the two things from a Rapid standpoint. I want to believe that the long-term answer that Robin Fraser figures out eventually this season is Cabral on the left with then Rubio up top as the false nine, because I think that's where you've got your two most important attacking players being successful. And it's what I talked about earlier in the show, I think gives more interesting fantasy possibilities in the midfield, but also a position where the Rapids just inherently have strengths. They've got legitimately 6, possibly 7 starters that would start on an average MLS midfield as well. So that's what I want to see long-term, but early prognostication, Cabral's at left wing where he was with the Galaxy, and Rubio's going to pick up where he left off in the midfield. Reid.
Thank you. I don't get thrown to all that often. You guys covered most of everything else. Just a couple of additions. Charlotte got Enzo Capetti, and that's they spent a lot of money for this kid, and that's a lot of attacking DPs that they have right now. He's likely going to be out on the wingers or may play the number 9, number 10 with Swiderski. So lots of options down there. So a nice little pickup there. I'm interested in Christian Ramirez coming into Columbus, new coach, some new things going on there. I think he's worth keeping an eye on from a fantasy point of view. And then Chicago just spent a lot of money. But I guess they got a lot of money. That's what it is. They made a lot of money.
Wait.
No, I got that back. They made a lot of money selling their forward. So
they haven't spent the Gaga money,
and
right?
They haven't spent the money yet. So I thought this was a good time to. We mentioned Chicago earlier from talking about some of the defense. They dropped a lot of cash, or they gained a lot of cash. So if they're going to drop that, this seems like a good place for them to go, because they could use some help with the production. So maybe we can see some more things in the future for forwards that could be fantasy relevant for Chicago right there. But otherwise, I think you guys nailed a lot of it. Is there anything else for the good of the order that we haven't touched on yet before we wrap things up?
I'm just going to say, so no one grills us, I understand that I don't think anyone said the word Carlos Heel. I think Blayne maybe just said it in a list. We know that's an assumed thing that you guys all know, but I feel like last year whenever we'd skip him, we'd get Ream. So we know he's still there. We like him. We're probably going to pick him.
We were focused mostly on transfers this time, which was some old people, some new people. This is just early preseason stuff. Things are still happening. News is still breaking. This is just to kind of wet your fantasy whistle, because we're getting close. We are getting very close. So
Walker Zimmerman is still at Nashville and still a really good center back. You should probably start him week 1, folks.
Yeah, we're talking about changes to the season, not
or things that got us excited. Carlos Heel doesn't get me excited. He's consistent. He doesn't excite me. Bruce Arena doesn't excite me.
Guys like Heel and Mukhtar will be in our first show podcast when we're picking our first lineups and everything. Yes. We're going to talk about those guys we wanted last year that we still want this year.
Yeah, exactly. I just felt obligated to say it.
No, very fair. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Very fun to get back into the flow of things as we sort of oil the hinges and blow the dust off some of our fantasy chops right here. Let's talk about our final plugs before we move on to the rest of the year. Matt.
Follow me on Twitter at LWS Matt Pollard if you like what you heard tonight and you want to hear me do that, but talk about the Rapids holding the high line, and then obviously all of my written content, if nothing else, until February 28th, 2023 at burgundywave.com.
Blayne.
Yeah, just plug Discord in this community. I mean, they kept us sane through the off season. There's always fun discussions going on there. Cam's always got drink recipes for you in our little bar section. If you're not part of Discord, come join us. If you are, I've enjoyed it this off season, even though I haven't been as active as I would have liked to have been. My family situation's a little busy with the 7-month-old right now, and we've got one in school. So, and I know Reid knows how it is with having a young one around the house. It just gets busy, but yeah, yours is a little older.
Mine
no,
just
but he
likes
was
to
young
scream.
once.
Yeah,
Like I had him.
yeah, and then it's been fun. But yeah, be part of these communities. That's what it's all about. I didn't realize how many soccer writers I interacted with from the Blue Testament until Mike threw out a list of everybody who was potentially losing their job with the news. And it's like, wow, there's a lot of good writers here that I've interacted with and read their stuff that I didn't know were there. It's just be part of the community and support where you can, make friends, because that's what this is really all about. I'm looking forward to my kids getting a little older and taking a few more road trips to see some other games. I know in the next year or two, a trip to Omaha up to see Cam is on in the works with the kids, but it's about getting out and meeting people, and I want to meet a lot more of our Discord crew as I'm allowed to travel or as they can come to Kansas City, one or the other. So just dive into this community. This has been a real boost for everybody, and it's kept a lot of people sane through some really rough times lately.
Ashley.
Yeah, I just want to circle back because I didn't comment in any way, but to all the things you guys said about all of the local outlets that may or may not be going by the wayside. You know, Sounder at Heart is one of the things I pay attention to the most. I honestly can't imagine my soccer passion without them. Wherever you're a fan of that team, please try to look up, if you don't already know, whatever contingency has been representing them through SB Nation, or who is representing them, smaller than that, and just pay attention to those, because that's where we get so much of our fantasy, and those people work really hard for not a lot. And I just wanted to echo everything that you guys said at the top of the show, that's really important to me. And I hope everybody can just contribute how they can.
Yeah, you guys, that's a great call outs to everyone who helps support this community. Discord, all the writers. I also want to just, I guess on the less serious side, everyone who's going to be helping with the MLS Fantasy Boss Project this year, really appreciate that. I'm reaching out to some people to see if we can get some new contributors. And also, Tyler's got a new graphic for his differentials that I hope people are going to enjoy seeing this year as well. If you went to the website over the break and it was down, that was me. I had to renew some stuff and it's fine, but we're back. We're there. It's all good. So I can't thank everybody enough who is part of this community, who interacts with us, who joined us tonight. You guys keep this fun, and we are here to help you find some fun in this great game and just enjoy it with us. So please enjoy the ride. There'll be more to come, and for the first time in 2023, as always, good luck.